Okay, let me start. Can you hear me? Today is from here to yeah, 7.10 to 7.52. Right, so let's start. Sutta Vacha. Atmaramascha munayo nirgantapyurukrame kurvantyahaitukīm bhaktim itham bhuta guno harihi. Sutta Goswami said all different varieties of Atmaramas, those who take pleasure in the Atma or spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. Shri Sridhar Swami, Nirgrantha, Granthibhya Nirgata. This is a verse about those who are Nirgrantha, those who are freed from various forms of bondage, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Here is that verse: Yadate moha kalilam buddhir viditarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. So, Swami has explained this verse to be referring to such persons, transcendental Atmarams, transcendentalists. Otherwise, it can refer to those who are freed from the knot. The knot refers to the knot of false ego, the knots of various anarthas which bind us to material existence. So those who are free from conditioned existence. No objection. Muktanam kim bhaktyetyaadi sarva akshep parihararthamaha. Why would a liberated soul have to engage in bhakti, in devotion service unto Lord Hari? Like this, one can have several objections. The simple answer to deal with all objections is Itham Bhuta Guno Harihi. These are the wonderful qualities of Lord Hari. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. Now, here, each word has been explained by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in great detail, and he has given more than 60 meanings to this verse. For instance, you can check in chapter 24 of Chaitanya Charitamrita, 61 explanations. First, he explained it to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Then the Lord explained it again to him, Sanatana Goswami. A study of all of Lord Chaitanya's explanations would be too detailed. It will require a separate seminar, in fact. But some idea you can get from Prabhupada's purport, which gives an outline of Lord Chaitanya's explanation. Each of these words, okay, let me do one thing. Let me just make a duplicate of it and bring it here. I'll go through the purport here so that you can see the words also. First of all, we have Atma Rama, those who take pleasure in Atma. But Atma can mean many things. Atma can mean the absolute truth, body, mind, endeavor, endurance, intelligence, personal habits. So Atma Rama refers to one who takes pleasure in the absolute truth, one who takes pleasure in the body, one who takes pleasure in the mind, one who takes pleasure in endeavor, one who takes pleasure in being in pursuing endurance, one who takes pleasure in his intelligence, one who takes pleasure in his personal habits. Munayaha. Munayaha. Munayaha can have various meanings. Those who are thoughtful, those who are grave and silent, ascetics, those who are persistent, those who are mendicants, those who are sages, and those who are saints. Now, the 61 is not, the 61 simply means that he has given 61 different meanings to the different words of this verse. If you put in these various combinations, then definitely you will have lot many more meanings, right? Even just with these two. If you in fact only take this one portion, just this Atma portion, you can give 7 different translations to this verse. Because the first translation will say, those who take pleasure in the absolute truth, though freed from all kinds of material bondage. Second translation, those who take pleasure in the body, they desire to enter under Lord devotion service. Those who take pleasure in the mind, those who take pleasure in endeavor, like that you can work out 7 different translations. But then Munayaha has 7 different meanings. So 7 times 7, you will get 49 varieties of translations just on this. So when it says 61 meanings, it doesn't mean that Lord Chaitanya is giving 61 translations of this. It simply means that he's giving totally, if you put all the word meanings, the different varieties of word meanings that he's giving, that comes to 61. If you actually work out the combinations, it will be gigantic. Nirgranthaha, freed from all bondage. It can mean freed from the bondage of nations. It can refer to being freed from the bondage of scriptural injunctions, which refers to the uncivilized, actually. It can refer to those who are capitalists, those who have a lot of money. It can also refer to those who don't have any money. That is because in Nirgrantha, you have the prefix Nihi, which becomes Nir, and that is used in various senses. Urukrame comes from the word Urukrama, and that refers to Krishna and his Vamana feature specifically. It refers to his incomparable activities. Kurvanti. Kurvanti means do, but in Sanskrit grammar we have different ways of expressing they do this. There is a way of saying they do this. For instance, okay, here is a textbook example. If you want to say he is cooking for himself, pachate, that would be enough to signify that. But if you want to say that he's cooking for someone else, then pachati would convey that sense. Now, kurvanti has the sense that they do. Kurvanti literally means they do, but they do for somebody else's pleasure, for the sake of someone else, not to benefit themselves, to benefit someone else, to give pleasure to someone else. So from this we understand that these different types of Atmaramas, they execute a haituki bhakti, an alloyed devotional service, not for their pleasure, which means they're doing it for the pleasure of this Lord, Urukrama. Urukrama literally means the great adventurer. Ahai tu keen bhaktim. Ahai tu keen comes from ahai tu ki, which comes from hai tu ki, which comes from hetu. Ahai tu keen means unmotivated. That's why it has a sense of being unalloyed. Hetu means literally cause or that which causes, causal. But it has the sense of being motive. It refers to a motive. So that one may have various motives for engaging in devotion service. One may want to attain sensual satisfaction. Dhruva initially engaged in devotional service unto Lord Vishnu, initially to attain opulences, which is just another form of sensual satisfaction. So material enjoyment might be one reason. Attainment of mystic powers, that's another. Attainment of liberation from material existence, that's another. Material enjoyment itself, there are different types. Then mystic powers, there are 8 primary mystic powers, Ashta Siddhis. Then regarding liberation, there are 5 types, Salabhya, Sarki, Samibhya, and so on. So, ahai to keen means without having any of those motives. So they engage in bhakti without desiring any of this. In other words, they simply want to make the Supreme Lord happy. It is not that they want to make the Supreme Lord happy and they want these things simultaneously. Then bhakti, taken together with ahai to keen, refers to unalloyed devotional service, unmotivated devotional service. Now that, first of all, bhakti itself has 9 different varieties. No, it has 3 varieties: sattvic, rajasic, tamasic. But then sometimes different modes predominate. So therefore, you can have something which is primarily sattvic but secondarily rajasic, or primarily sattvic, secondarily tamasic, primarily rajasic, secondarily sattvic, and so on. So in that way, you have 3 by 3, 9. And if you work out further, you can have 27, 3, 9, then 9 times 9, 81 varieties you can have. It depends how much you want to break up. Then beyond all of this is pure devotional service. And pure devotional service in the initial phase is called pure sadhana bhakti. So pure sadhana bhakti will develop into pure bhava bhakti, pure prema bhakti, and there are several stages beyond it. Prabhupada has given some English approximations of them. And different persons in different prema bhakti rasas achieve different stages. Then itham bhuta guno harihi, itham bhuta guna. Such are the wonderful qualities. That refers to the absolute bliss, complete bliss that one attains from devotional service. It is much greater than the happiness of attaining impersonal Brahman or anything lower than that. And then Lord Chaitanya gives various examples: the 4 Kumaras, Shukadeva Goswami, the young gopis in Vrindavan, Rukmini Devi. Then he attracts elderly ladies in his pastimes by parental affection. He attracts the minds of men in Dasya and Sakhya. Hari. Hari itself has various meanings, but it primarily refers to one who takes away everything that is inauspicious, or one who takes away the mind, which means he captures the mind, he captivates the mind by giving transcendental love of Godhead. So in other words, by his personal features and transcendental attributes, the Lord attracts all psychological activities of a pure devotee. Such is the attractive power of Lord Krishna. The attraction is so powerful that a pure devotee never hankers for any one of the four principles of religion. The four principles of religion refer to dharma, artha, kama, moksha, attainment of pious credits, attainment of wealth, attainment of sensual satisfaction, or attainment of liberation from material existence, which doesn't provide you spiritual variety. These are the attractive features of the transcendental attributes of the Lord, and adding to this are the words api and cha. One can increase the imports unlimitedly. So, by interpreting each and every word of the shloka, one can see unlimited numbers of transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna that attract the mind of a pure devotee. A very interesting chapter, chapter 24. If you have time, you can go through it. Very, very nice, very detailed explanation by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Good, it'll be a very good thing. Okay, but we don't have time here to deal with that. Okay, then. Why am I here with this? I'm sorry. I should have. Alright, fine. Okay. Nanu bhaktim kurvanta nama etat shastrabhyasi shugasi kim karanam? Objection. Alright. Shukadeva Goswami could have engaged in bhakti. He was an Atma Rama. So he could have engaged in Hari Bhakti. He could have engaged in devotional service unto Lord Hari. Why did Shukadeva Goswami have to study this scripture, Bhagavatam? It's a very big book. Why did he have to do that? What is the reason? Anticipating this, he speaks, text 11, Harer Gunakshiptam Matir Bhagavan Badarayani Adhyakam Madhakhyanam Nityam Vishnujana Priya. Srila Shukadeva Goswami, son of Srila Vyasadeva, was not only transcendently powerful, he was also very dear to the devotees of the Lord. Thus he underwent the study of this great narration, Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyakyanadi prasangena tat sangati kama iti bhava. It is implied that in the midst of explaining Srimad Bhagavatam and so on, he became desirous of associating with devotees of Lord Vishnu. So this is the answer to the question, how is it that Shukadeva Goswami began to explain the Bhagavatam? This question was asked. So this is the answer to that question. This ends the answer to that question. Now, Jiva Goswami and Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, they refer to the Brahmavaivarta Purana. They point out that Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul even within the womb of his mother. Srila Vyasadeva knew that the child after his birth would not stay at home. Therefore, Vyasadeva, impressed upon him the synopsis of the Bhagavatam so that the child could be made attached to the transcendental activities of the Lord. After his birth, the child was still more educated in the subject of the Bhagavatam by recitation of the actual poems. So the idea was that, and Vishnu Chakravarti explains, that Vyasadeva and Shukadev, they became attracted to the transcendental qualities of the Lord. Just as by Narada's endeavor, Vyasadeva was able to narrate the great epic of Srimad Bhagavatam. Similarly, by the mercy of Vyasadeva, Srila Shukadeva Goswami was able to grasp the import. So just as Vyasadeva became attracted, Shukadeva Goswami also became attracted. In fact, Shukadeva Goswami became detached from being completely absorbed in the personal Brahman and positively took up the personal activity of the Lord. In fact, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur points out that Shukadeva Goswami considered that, I have simply wasted my time in meditating on the impersonal Brahman. In other words, he realized more transcendental bliss with the personal feature than the impersonal. And from that time, not only did he himself become very dear to the Vishnu Janas or the devotees of the Lord, but also the Vishnu Janas became very dear to him. Now, why is Sutta Goswami saying this? That is because devotees of the Supreme Lord actually do not like those who are attracted to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord. There are two types of impersonalists. We know that. There are the offensive impersonalists, and I will say there are Mayavadi impersonalists and non-Mayavadi impersonalists. But both of them are not dear to those who are interested in devotional service unto the Supreme Lord. That is because the Mayavadi impersonalist, he considers that Krishna and Krishna's body and his opulences, everything to be various features of Maya, to be a part of Maya. Now that is obviously very offensive, and that person is just going to go to hell. Now the non-Mayavadi impersonalist, he accepts that Krishna's variegatedness is spiritual, but he is not interested in eternally serving the Supreme Lord. He engages in devotional service, but he wants to merge into Brahman. He wants impersonal realization. That's his ultimate goal. So therefore, Prabhupada elsewhere in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada points out that, if I remember correctly, it's in Nectar of Devotion. He points out that the impersonal liberation that Prabhupada says Krishna gives these impersonalists, the successful impersonalists, that is the same destination that is attained by those who are enemies of the Lord. So, in other words, even these non-Mayavadi impersonalists, they're as bad as the enemies who are fortunate enough to be directly killed by Krishna. So they have an inimical attitude because they don't jiver Swarupai Krishna Nitya Das, and they don't want to come back to their original position of service to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the pure devotee servants of the Supreme Lord, they don't like the impersonalists. The devotees of the Lord who do not wish to kill the individuality of the living entities and have desire to become personal servitors of the Lord do not very much like the impersonalists. And similarly, the impersonalists who desire to become one with the Supreme are unable to evaluate the devotees of the Lord. Thus, from time immemorial, these two transcendental pilgrims have sometimes been competitors. In other words, each of them likes to keep separate from the other because of the ultimate personal and impersonal realizations. Therefore, it appears that Srila Shukadeva Goswami also had no liking for the devotees. But since he himself became a saturated devotee, he desired always the transcendental association of the Vishnu Janas. And the Vishnu Janas also liked this association, since he became a personal Bhagavatam. Thus, both the son and the father were completely cognizant of transcendental knowledge in Brahman. And afterwards, both of them became absorbed in the personal features of the Supreme Lord. The question as to how Shukadeva Goswami was attracted by the narration of the Bhagavatam is just completely answered by this shloka. Okay, then Sridhar Swami, he begins to give an answer to the question, the other question, that how is it that Parikshit got into hearing from Shukadeva Goswami while he had taken up a vow to fast until death. So that question is being answered now here. Parikshitotharacharshir janma karma vilapanam samstham cha pandaputranam vakshya krishna kathodayam. Sutta Goswami thus addressed the rishis headed by Shaunaka. Now I shall begin the transcendental narration of the Lord Sri Krishna and topics of the birth, activities, and deliverance of King Parikshit, the sage amongst kings, as well as topics of the renunciation of the worldly order by the sons of Pandu. Okay. Okay, this refers to how the sons of Pandu attained liberation, how they ended up their presence in this world. And the discussion will be such that there would be narrations about Lord Sri Krishna also. And Prabhupada points this out. In Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll find not just some story, but a story which is connected to the Supreme Lord. In fact, all the Puranas are like this. Without Krishna, all the supplementary literatures like the Puranas and Mahabharata are simply stories or historical facts. But with Krishna, they become transcendental. And when we hear of them, we at once become transcendently related with the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam is also a Purana. But the special significance of this Purana is that the activities of the Lord are central and not just supplementary historical facts. Srimad Bhagavatam is thus recommended by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a spotless Purana. There's a class of less intelligent devotees of the Bhagavata Purana who desire to relish at once the activities of the Lord narrated in the 10th canto without first understanding the primary cantos. They are under the false impression that the other cantos are not connected with Krishna, and thus more foolishly than intelligently they take to the reading of the 10th canto. These readers are specifically told herein that the other cantos of the Bhagavatam are as important as the 10th canto. We will come across this point in the 2nd canto. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur will talk about this. He will, in fact, state this. No one should try to go into the matters of the 10th canto without having thoroughly understood the purport of the other 9 cantos. Krishna and his pure devotees, like the Pandavas, are on the same plane. So you'll find in Srimad Bhagavatam there's a discussion of the Pandavas, of Dhritarashtra. So many things are there. But the discussion will always have Krishna as the center. You'll notice this. It's a unique feature of Srimad Bhagavatam. So then, while desiring to describe Parikshit's birth, first of all, he points out that Parikshit was protected by Krishna when Ashwatthama had released a Brahmastra, which was about to kill child Parikshit. So that is now going to be described from text 13. Yada Yadamrthe Kaurava Srinjayanam Vire Shatho Vira Gatim Gateshu Vrikodara Vidh Gadabhimarsha Bhagnodante Dhritarashtraputre Bhartuh Priyam Drauni Ritisma Pashyan Krishna Sutana Swapatam Shiramsi Upaharad Vik Priyameva Tasya Jugupsitam Karma Vigarhayanti. When the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations. And when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down lamenting, his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimasen, the son of Dronacharya, Ashwatthama, beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and delivered the heads as a prize to his master, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. Duryodhana, however, disapproved of the heinous act, and he was not pleased in the least. Okay, that is all of this is incorporated here. So this is the beginning of proper Bhagavatam zone discussion, and here we see that it begins where Mahabharata had almost ended. But we are talking of the core storyline of Mahabharata. And this suggests that Bhagavatam is also Krishna Katha. You will find here Krishna is right there in the center. The Mahabharata was presented so that people would read Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is Krishna Katha or topics of Krishna because it is spoken by the Lord. And the Bhagavatam is also Krishna Katha because it is spoken about the Lord. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted everyone to be informed of both Krishna Kathas by his order. Lord Krishna Chaitanya is Krishna himself in the garb of a devotee of Krishna. And therefore, the versions of both Lord Krishna and Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are identical. Lord Chaitanya desired that all who are born in India seriously understand such Krishna Kathas, and then after full realization, preach the transcendental message to everyone in all parts of the world. Mata Shishunam. One minute. Mata Shishunam Nidhanam Sutanam Nishamya Ghoram Paritapyamana Tada Rudad Vashpa Kalakulakshi Tam Santvayanna Kiritamali. Draupadi, the mother of the 5 children of the Pandavas, after hearing of the massacre of her sons, began to cry in distress with eyes full of tears. Trying to pacify her in her great loss, Arjuna spoke to her thus. Tada shashaste pramrajami bhadre yad brahmabandho shira atatayina gandiva muktair vishikhair upahare tvakramya yat snasyasi dagdhaputra. O gentle lady, when I present you with the head of that Brahman, after beheading him with arrows from my Gandiva bow, I shall then wipe the tears from your eyes and pacify you. Then, after burning your sons' bodies, you can take your bath standing on his head. This is how Kshatriyas talk. This is how they talk. In the Ramayana, also, we come across Kshatriya talk. This is how they talk. So you shouldn't be surprised that, what is this? A ghastly way of talking, but this is how they talk. He's a Kshatriya. She's also a Kshatriya. She's a Kshatriya lady. So that's how they talk. Here, this expression, Atatayena, here Swami refers to that. Brahmavantor, first of all, he's described as a degraded Brahmana. Brahmana Adhamasya, degraded, the lowest of the Brahmins. And he's described as, this is about Drauni or Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama is also described as an Atatayi. This word Atatayinaha refers to him. Aggressor. Aggressor refers to a person who does these 6 activities. A person who does all of this is called an aggressor. Agnino Garadaschaiva Shastrapane Dhanapaha Kshetradara Haraschaiva Shadete Hyatatayinaha. An enemy who sets fire to the house, administers poison, attacks all of a sudden with deadly weapons, plunders wealth or usurps agricultural fields or entices one's wife is called an aggressor. And it is also pointed out that there is no sin or crime in killing such an aggressor. Such an aggressor, though he be a Brahmana or a so-called son of a Brahmana, has to be punished in all circumstances. Here, because Ashwatthama had killed the sleeping sons of Draupadi, he comes under this category. Attacks all of a sudden with deadly weapons. So therefore he says, Arjuna says that he's going to avenge for this. When Arjuna promised to behead the aggressor named Ashwatthama, he knew well that Ashwatthama was the son of a Brahmana. But because the so-called Brahmana acted like a butcher, he was taken as such. And there was no question of sin in killing such a Brahmin son who proved to be a villain. Iti priyam valgu vichitra jalpai sasanpayetva chutamitra suta anvadravaddam shita ugra dhanva kapidhvajo guru putram rathena. Arjuna, who is guided by the infallible Lord as friend and driver, thus satisfied the dear lady by such statements. Then he dressed in armor and armed himself with furious weapons, and getting into his chariot, he set out to follow Ashwatthama, the son of his martial teacher. So he spoke these sweet words to her, and he had Lord Achyuta as his friend and as his chariot driver. He had a terrible bow, and he had Hanuman on his flank. So he followed Ashwatthama on his chariot. He got on a chariot and started following him. Tama patantam sa vilakshya durat kumar hodvignam manarathena Paradravat prana paripsur vyam yavad gamam rudra bhayad yathaka. Ashwathama, the murderer of the princess, seeing from a great distance Arjuna coming at him with great speed, fled in his chariot, panic stricken just to save his life, as Brahma fled in fear from Shiva. So Drauni or Ashwathama, Drona's son, he had killed these sleeping sons of the Pandavas. So he was very much distressed in mind, which means his heart was pounding in anxiety. He just wanted to somehow or other protect his life. He just wanted to live. He did not want the fame that is expected. All those who engage in warfare in Vedic Dharma, they are generally trained to not be paranoid about keeping their body and soul together. Rather, they should aim for viragati, heroic death. Either they should win heroically or they should die heroically. So he was not interested in that sort of fame. That kind of fame is actually very righteous fame. It's good. So he went as far as he could, and then he stopped. Now here, the word kaha, yatha kaha, but in some manuscripts it reads yatha arkaha, in which case arka means Surya, but kaha will mean Brahma. So then that comes here. Prabhupada deals with that here. Kaha means Brahma, who once became allured by his daughter and began to follow her. He began to follow her in the shape of a deer, which infuriated Shiva, who attacked Brahma with his trident. Brahmaji fled in fear of his life. As far as Arkaha is concerned, sometimes the reading is instead of Yatha Kaha, it says Yatharkaha. So if you take that other reading, Arka iti pathe, Vamana Purana Katha Suchita. Typing mistake. Katha Suchita. Then there's a reference in the Vamana Purana. There was a demon by the name Vidvan who was gifted with a glowing golden airplane which traveled to the back of the sun, and night disappeared because of the glowing effulgence of this plane. Thus the sun god became angry, and with his virulent rays, he melted the plane. This enraged Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva then attacked the sun god, who fled away and at last fell down at Kashi, Varanasi, and the place became famous as Lolarka. Lolarka Namna Vikhyata. It became famous as Lolarka. Yada Sharanamaatmanam Maikshata Shrantavajinam Astram Brahma Shiro Mene Atmatranam Dujatmajam. When the son of the Brahmana Ashwathama saw that his horses were tired, he considered that there was no alternative for protection outside of his using the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra nuclear weapon. So when he realized that he had no one to protect him, no one might say, no, but he could have run away. He could have just fled. He could have just escaped somehow. And that running away would have protected him. Na, tasyapi kuntitatva. No, that was also not easy. That for him to run away, then his horses had to be capable, but the horses were tired. So he was stifled in that manner. So therefore, he thought about the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra. Dujatmaja iti adhirga darshitamaha. Notice that he is referred to as the son of a Brahmana. He's not referred to as a Brahmana. He's referred to as the son of a Brahmana. This is a sarcastic reference to Ashwathama to point out that he did not have any foresight. He was immature. He didn't consider the various consequences of invoking the Brahmastra. In the ultimate issue only, when there is no alternative, the nuclear weapon called the Brahmastra is applied. Dvijatmaja. He's not a qualified Brahmana. The most intelligent man is called the Brahmana, and it is not a hereditary title. Ashwatthama was also formerly called the Brahmabandhu, or the friend of a Brahmana. Being a friend of a Brahmana does not mean that one is a Brahmana by qualification. A friend or son of a Brahmana, when fully qualified, can be called a Brahmana, not otherwise. Athopasprisya salilam standade tat samahitaha ajanannapi samharam pranakraksha upasthite. Since his life was in danger, he touched water and sanctity and concentrated upon the chanting of the hymns for throwing nuclear weapons, although he did not know how to withdraw such weapons. So he engaged in the meditation that was required in order to throw forth the Brahmastra. But he didn't know how to retract it. What is the reason for that? Prana krikshre upasthite. Because his life was in danger. So he didn't think all these things. Prabhupada points out that this mantra technology is subtle. It is done through purification of sound. Very interesting. Okay. Later on, I will explain. When we come to third canto, that's an explanation given by an ISKCON scientist, Sadapata Prabhu, about how this works to some extent. But he explains it in the context of something that happens in the third canto. So when we come to that point, then I'll explain it there. Tatah pradushkritam teja prachandam sarvatodisham pranapadam abhiprekshya vishnum jishnu ruvachaha. Thereupon a glaring light spread in all directions. It was so fierce that Arjuna thought his own life in danger. And so he began to address Lord Krishna. So then there was a radiant illumination spreading in all directions. When he saw that, he considered that his own life was in danger. Arjuna Vacha, Krishna Krishna Mahavaho Bhaktanam Abhayankara Tvameko Dakhyamananam Apavargosi Samsrute. Arjuna said, "Oh my Lord Shri Krishna, you are the Almighty Personality of Godhead. There is no limit to your different energies. Therefore, only you are competent to instill fearlessness in the hearts of your devotees. Everyone in the flames of material miseries can find the path of liberation in you only." Prastutam Vigyapayutam Prathamam Stauti Krishneti Chaturubhi. He wants to pray to the Supreme Lord. He has a request in his mind. But before submitting that request, he first of all glorifies Krishna in 4 verses. Why does he say this? Because that is the method. Before you ask something from the Supreme Lord, even if your life is in danger, you have to first of all make it very clear that the Supreme Lord is supreme and that we are his eternal servants. In other words, this is what is called Sambandha Gyan. We have to inform the Supreme Lord of our position. Even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us this. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam dau kripaya tava pada pankajasta dhuli sadrisham vichintaya. The same way, Arjuna also, he glorifies the Supreme Personality of Godhead in knowledge. So now keep in mind, Arjuna's life is in danger, but still he doesn't forget to pray to the Supreme Lord. It is very, very important. We will see this feature amongst devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. Arjuna, he speaks these things out of personal awareness because he had experienced Krishna's quality during Kurukshetra war. Krishna is almighty and is especially the cause of fearlessness for the devotees. A devotee of the Lord is always fearless because of the protection given by the Lord. And Prabhupada, he compares, not just Prabhupada here, Arjuna himself, he refers to samsara or transmigration, material existence, to be a fire which burns everyone. That is referred to as samsara dava anala. Therefore, the personification of Krishna's mercy, the person who is repeating Krishna's instructions to us, the spiritual master, he can save us because he gives us the instruction that has been given by Lord Krishna, by which we can get out of material existence. The spiritual master, by his words, can penetrate into the heart of the suffering person and inject knowledge transcendental, which alone can extinguish the fire of material existence. Tumadya Purusha Sakshad Ishvara Prakrite Para Mayam Yudasti Chikchaktya Kaivalyesta Atmani. You are the original personality of Godhead who expands himself all over the creations and is transcendental to material energy. You have cast away the effects of the material energy by dint of your spiritual potency. You're always situated in eternal bliss and transcendental knowledge. This verse has been explained in some detail by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and also to some extent by Srila Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada summarized that discussion in this purport. Arjuna says that Krishna is Ishvara, the supreme controller. Why? Because he is that being who is transcendental to Prakriti. And how is that? Because he is the original cause. And even though he is the original cause, he is not transformed by Maya and so on. Because he is present beyond the influence of material illusion. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Daivi Esha Gunamai, Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mahame Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantite. If we surrender unto Krishna's lotus feet, we can get out of Maya, which itself signifies that Krishna is beyond Maya. Krishna Surya Sam, Maya Hoy Andhaka, Jahan Krishna Taha Nahi Maya Radhika. Krishna is just like the sun, and Maya or material existence is just like darkness. Wherever there is a light of the sun, darkness or ignorance at once vanishes. So, from this we understand that Krishna is the original personality of God. See, Tama Adya Purusha. You're the Adya Purusha. You're the original Purusha, which means you are Swayam Bhagavan. The all-pervasive Lord Vishnu is Lord Krishna's plenary portion or expansion. The Lord expands himself in innumerable forms of Godhead and living beings along with his different energies. But Sri Krishna is the original primeval Lord from whom everything emanates. So Paramatma is also an expansion of Krishna. But the Supreme Lord, we should keep in mind, he is far above material creation. He is not influenced by material creation. Darkness is a perverse representation of the sun. And therefore, the existence of darkness depends on the existence of the sun, but in the sun proper, there is no trace of darkness. So that is the same thing. Maya is coming from Krishna, but Maya has no effect in Krishna. And wherever Krishna is, there is no Maya. Chiefly, he has his spiritual energies and he has his material energy. This world is under the control of his material energy. The world is not conducted by the energies or powerful agents by themselves, but by the potent, all-powerful, with all energies. Saeva jivalokasya maya mohita chetasaha vidhatse svena viryena shreyo dharmadi lakshanam. And yet, though you are beyond the purview of the material energy, you execute the four principles of liberation characterized by religion and so on for the ultimate good of the conditioned souls. Trivarga datapi tvameva ityaha. You are the one who give everyone dharma, artha, and kama. In other words, when we engage in some pious activity, in our next life it will fructify, but it doesn't automatically fructify. There is someone who is giving an approval, and that approval is the Supreme Lord Krishna. He's the one, therefore, who gives the fruits of dharma, artha, kama. if one engages in pious activities, he will be benefited in his next life and future lifetimes. That benefit is given by Krishna. Yastvam maya abhibhuya sthitaha sa eva maya abhibhutasya janasya dharmadi phalam upasita sanvithatse. So you give these results while staying completely outside of Maya. Those who are under Maya, they worship you and they attain dharma artha kama. And this you do by your own prowess. Here, so the Supreme Lord, he descends to this world, but he is not influenced by Maya. Whereas the living entities in this world, they are completely under the clutches of Maya. The living entity is different from the Lord. One is eternally the servitor of the Lord, and when he forgets this position, he thinks of enjoying the material world, but factually he is in delusion. He is in illusion. The Lord descends to eradicate this false sense of enjoyment and thus reclaim conditioned souls back to God. So, on one hand, those who worship him for dharma artha kama, the Lord gives that. But those who worship him for liberation or for love of God, he gives that. Strictly speaking, even for dharma artha kama, if one sticks to the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, or his plenary portions, he will eventually be liberated. Therefore, those who are extremely paranoid about not being liberated but only enjoying dharma artha kama life after life, they keep away from serious worship of Lord Vishnu. They only accept the minimal official worship of Lord Vishnu. They don't go beyond that. तथायं चावतारस्ते विभो भारजिहीर्षया स्वानां चानन्य भावानां अनुध्यानाय चासकृत. Thus you descend as an incarnation to remove the burden of the world and to benefit your friends, especially those who are your exclusive devotees and are constantly wrapped in meditation upon you. But then by this incarnation, you appear to be partial to saintly persons, anticipating. With this in mind, he speaks this verse. His removal of the burden of the world happens by his will. Actually, he can do it just by his will, but he does it in such a manner that he causes his own devotees to be constantly wrapped in meditation upon him. So in other words, he blesses them with bhakti. These are devotees, exclusive devotees, who are only interested in pleasing him. These kinds of devotees. So he does it. He mixes his own purpose with taking care of his devotees who only want devotion service. So the Lord gives them unlimited facilities. Everyone is related with the Lord. He is equal to everyone, yet he is more inclined to his own men and devotees. Okay, so now after offering all these prayers, then he comes to ask him what he actually wants to ask. Kim idam svit kuto veti devadeva navednyam sarvato mukhamayati tejah paramadharana. O Lord of Lords, how is it that this dangerous effulgence is spreading all around? Where does it come from? I do not understand it. Anything that is presented before the personality of Godhead should be so done after due presentation of respectful prayers. That is the standard procedure. And Sri Arjuna, although an intimate friend of the Lord, is observing this method for general information. So it's a standard. In Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, these things are critical. Those who are advanced devotees, they do not need to follow this. But nevertheless, they do so out of affection, out of love. Okay. Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Vedthedam Dronaputrasya Brahmam Astram Pradarshitam. Naivasau Veda Samharam Pranabhatha Upasthiti. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, know from me that this is the act of the son of Drona. He has thrown the hymns of nuclear energy, Brahmastra, and he does not know how to retract the glare. He has helplessly done this, being afraid of imminent death. This has been exhibited by the son of Drona, this Brahmastra. So Sridhar Swami points out, he has merely exhibited this just because he was in a life crisis. In other words, he is not expert in using this, because if you were to be expert, then he would certainly know how to retract it, but he doesn't know how to retract it. Etachet tvam tu vetha janasi, but you know this. You do know this. You know how to retract it. It creates an intolerable heat similar to atomic radiation, but the difference is that the atomic bomb is a gross type of nuclear weapon, whereas the Brahmastra is a subtle type of weapon produced by chanting hymns. It is a different science, and in the days gone by, such science was cultivated in the land of Bharatavarsha. The subtle science of chanting hymns is also material, but it has yet to be known by the modern material scientists. Subtle material science is not spiritual, but it has a direct relationship with the spiritual method, which is still subtler. A chanter of hymns knew how to apply the weapon as well as how to retract it. That was perfect knowledge, but the son of Dronacharya, who made use of this subtle science, did not know how to retract it. He applied it, being afraid of his imminent death, and thus the practice was not only improper but also irreligious. So, in other words, this was something completely wrong, and he is fit to be punished by the Supreme Lord. न ह्यस्यान्यत्तमं किञ्चित् अस्त्रं प्रत्यवकर्षणम् Jahyastra Teja Unnadham Astragyo Hyastra Tejasa. Arjuna, only another Brahmastra can counteract this weapon. Since you are expert in the military science, subdue this weapon's glare with the power of your own weapon. So there, previously, or rather, in the Vedic science of subtle material technology, there's a way to counteract. For the atomic bombs, there's no counter weapon to neutralize the effects, but by subtle science, the action of a Brahmastra can be counteracted. And those who were expert in the military science in those days could counteract the Brahmastra. The son of Dronacharya, did not know the art of counteracting the weapon, and therefore Arjuna was asked to counteract it by the power of his own weapon. Sutavacha. Prutva Bhagavata Proktam. Phalguna Paraviraha. Sprishtvaapastam parikramya brahmam brahmastra santadhe. Sri Sutta Goswami said, hearing this from the personality of Godhead, Arjuna touched water for purification, and after circumambulating Lord Shri Krishna, he cast his Brahmastra weapon to counteract the other one. So he did a pradakshina from the Supreme Lord. And he cast his Brahmastra weapon in order to counteract the other Brahmastra weapon. Samhatyan yonyo bhayo tejasi sharasamvrite avritya rodasi khamcha vavriddhaterka vahmi vat. When the rays of the two Brahmastras combined, a great circle of fire like the disk of the sun covered all outer space and the whole firmament of planets. So both of them joined together and they grew. They became bigger and bigger. The radiation of atomic energy is very insignificant in comparison to the heat produced by a Brahmastra. The atomic bomb explosion can at most blow up one globe, but the heat produced by the Brahmastra can destroy the whole cosmic situation. The comparison is therefore made to the heat at the time of annihilation. Drishtvaastra tejastu tayostrin lokan pradahan mahat Dakhyamana praja sarva samvartakamamam sata. All the population of the three worlds was scorched by the combined heat of the weapons. Everyone was reminded of the samvartaka fire which takes place at the time of annihilation. So when they saw this war, this duel between Drauni and Phalguna, Drauni is Ashwathama, Phalguna is Arjuna. And they thought that is this Samvartaka? Is this the fire that comes up from Sankarshana's mouth at the time of annihilation? Is this that? Although the Brahmastra was released on this earth, the heat produced by the combination of both weapons covered all the universe and all the populations and all the different planets began to feel the heat excessively and compared it to that of the Samvartaka fire. No planet, therefore, is without living beings as less intelligent materialistic men think. Prajopadravamalaksya lokam vyatikaram chatam matam cha vasudevasya sanjahararjunodvayam. Thus seeing the disturbance of the general populace and the imminent destruction of the planets, Arjuna at once retracted both Brahmastra weapons as Lord Sri Krishna desired. Lokanam vyatikaram, vyatyayam, nasham ityartha. When he saw the disturbance, when he saw the destruction of the worlds, then he understood the opinion of Lord Vasudeva, and then he retracted both the Brahmastras. The theory that the modern atomic bomb explosions can annihilate the world is a childish imagination. First of all, the atomic energy is not powerful enough to destroy the world. And secondly, ultimately, it all rests on the supreme will of the Supreme Lord, because without his will or sanction, nothing can be built up or destroyed. It's foolish also to think that natural laws are ultimately powerful. Material nature's law works under the direction of the Lord as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord says there that natural laws work under his supervision. Maya dhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. The world can be destroyed only by the will of the Lord and not by the whims of tiny politicians. Lord Sri Krishna desired that the weapons released by both Drauni and Arjuna be withdrawn, and it was carried out by Arjuna at once. Similarly, there are many agents of the all-powerful Lord, and by his will only can one execute what he desires. Tata asadya tarasa darunam gautami sutam bhavanda marshatam rakshah pashnam rasha naya yatha. Arjuna, his eyes blazing in anger like two red balls of copper, dexterously arrested the son of Gautami and bound him with ropes like an animal. Gautami refers to Kripi, who was born in the dynasty of Gautama. There is an example here, bound him with ropes like an animal. This indicates that he did so mercilessly. He mercilessly bound him up. And his tying up Ashwathama was dharmic. Therefore, the example is given here that he was tied like a sacrificial animal. Tying up a sacrificial animal for an animal sacrifice at a place and at a time and for persons who are allowed to do it is dharma. In Kali Yuga, it is forbidden. But previously, these sacrifices were there. According to Sridhar Swami, Arjuna was obliged to catch this son of a Brahmana like an animal as a part of his duty, dharma. This suggestion by Sridhar Swami is also confirmed in the later statement of Sri Krishna. Krishna will say this. Arjuna was a bona fide son of Dronacharya and Kripi, but because he had degraded himself to a lower status of life, it was proper to treat him as an animal and not as a Brahmana. Viraya Ninishantam Rajwa Badhva Ripum Balat Praha Arjunam Prakupito Bhagavan Ambujekshana. After binding Ashwathama, Arjuna wanted to take him to the military camp. The personality of God is Sri Krishna, looking on with his lotus eyes, spoke to Arjuna in an angry mood. शोकरोषादि युक्तस्यापि अर्जुनस्य धर्मनिष्ठाख्यापनाय Sri Krishna Vakya. Lord Krishna's words will be set out in six verses. And that would be in order to propagate, in order to propagate the fact that Arjuna was fixed in Vedic Dharma to such an extent that even if he is in a state of lamentation and fury and so on, still he is fixed in Vedic Dharma. That's called Nirantara Dharmika, a person who is uninterruptedly dharmic. In Krishna consciousness, first of all, we have to come to this point. Then we have to come to the point of being uninterruptedly sattvic within the boundary of dharma. Then we have to come to the point of being uninterruptedly pure in spiritual life, within the boundary of sattvic life and within the boundary of Vedic dharma. Then we can attain the perfection of pure devotional service, prema bhakti. So he wanted to bring him to the camp where King Yudhishthira was there. Now here, Lord Krishna's eyes are described as Ambuja Ikshana, lotus eyes, whereas Arjuna's eyes have been described as Tamaraksha. His eyes, his angry eyes, were copper red. Both Arjuna and Lord Sri Krishna are described here in an angry mood. But Arjuna's eyes were like balls of red copper, whereas the eyes of the Lord were like lotuses. This means that the angry mood of Arjuna and that of the Lord are not on the same level. The Lord is transcendence, and thus he is absolute in any stage. His anger is not like the anger of a conditioned living being within the modes of qualitative material nature, because he is absolute. Both his anger and pleasure are the same. His anger is not exhibited in the three modes of material nature. It's only a sign of his bent of mind towards the cause of his devotee, because that is his transcendental nature. Therefore, even if he's angry, the object of anger is blessed, is unchanged in all circumstances. Mainam partha bhasitratum brahma bandhum vimam jahi yosa vanagasas suptan avadhin nishibalakan. Lord Shri Krishna said, "O Arjuna, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of a Brahmana, Brahmabandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep." These were boys who did not commit any offense. They were sinless. Specifically, Lord Krishna is referring to Drauni, Ashwatthama, as a Brahmabandhu, relative of a Brahmana. A person who takes birth in a family of a Brahmana but is not qualified to be called a Brahmana is addressed as a relative of a Brahmana and not as a Brahmana. The son of a High Court judge is not virtually a High Court judge, but there is no harm in addressing a High Court judge's son as a relative of the Honorable Justice. Therefore, as by birth only one does not become a High Court judge, so also one does not become a Brahmana simply by birthright, but by acquiring the necessary qualifications of a Brahmana. As a High Court judgeship is a post for the qualified man, so also the post of a Brahmana is attainable by qualification only. So, Brahmana is meant to be a person who has certain features, certain personal qualities. We'll see in Bhagavad Gita also that in the last chapter we see Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. They're meant to have certain features. If a person is born in a family of a Brahmana, he's meant to be trained to become a qualified Brahmana. But if that doesn't happen, then he must be treated as a non-Brahmana. Or to be polite, he should be treated as a relative of a Brahmana. Same thing applies for Vaishnavas also. If you cannot become a Brahmana just by taking birth by being born as the son of a genuine Brahmana, similarly, You certainly cannot be called a Vaishnava just because you are born to a genuine Vaishnava. That also has guna karma. In other words, through external accreditation, we can't use these labels in a manner that is consistent with scripture. Lord Sri Krishna, the supreme authority of all religious principles, the Vedas, has personally pointed out these differences. And he's about to explain the reason for this in the following shlokas. Riporapi suptasya balasya cha vadaha na dharmaha iti अन्यार्थाय दर्शयति. अन्यार्थाय दर्शयति. Mattam iti. Even if one's enemy, no, it is not dharma to kill the son of even one's enemy if he is asleep. So this is another point from the scriptures, and that Lord Krishna, he brings it up now. He's quoting this is actually rather a paraphrase. It's a paraphrase from the Dharma Shastras. Mattam pramattam unmattam suptam balam striyam jadam prapannam viratham bhitam na ripum hanti dharma with. A person who knows the principles of religion does not kill an enemy who is careless, intoxicated, insane, asleep, afraid, or devoid of his chariot. Nor does he kill a boy, a woman, a foolish creature, or a surrendered soul. Mattam, careless, refers to someone who is careless because he is intoxicated, he is drunk, and so on. Pramattam means that he is not in focus. Unmattam, grahavatadina, he is insane, he is clinically sick. Jadam, foolish. Anudyamam, which means he is lazy, inert, he's foolish in that sense. Prapannam, Sharanagatam, he has surrendered, he's raised his hands and he's saying, I belong to you, don't kill me, I'll do whatever you say. Viratham, his chariot is broken, he's lost his chariot. Or a woman, you don't kill these people. These are general principles. An enemy who does not resist is never killed by a warrior who knows the principles of religion. Formerly, battles were fought on the principles of religion, not for the sake of sense gratification. If the enemy happened to be intoxicated, asleep, etc., as above mentioned, he was never to be killed. These are some of the codes of religious war. Formerly, war was never declared by the whims of selfish political leaders. It was carried out on religious principles, free from all vices. Violence carried out on religious principles is far superior to so-called non-violence. Swapranavyah parapranai prapushnatyah grinah khalaha tadvatastasya hi shreyo yaddoshad yatyadah puman. A cruel and wretched person who maintains his existence at the cost of others' lives deserves to be killed for his own well-being. Otherwise, he will go down by his own actions. Tadvadho Dandarupas Tasya Vishaya Pushat. He deserves to be killed as a punishment for his own good. It would actually lead to something good for him. Yataha, because Danda Prashita Rahita Dosha. If a person is not given such punishment, if he is not given appropriate punishment, and if he does not engage in the prescribed forms of atonement, then for the crime, for the adharma that he committed, that man will go down. In other words, he will go to hell. Tatha smaranti, this is noted in the Smriti. Rajapir dhridadandastu katva papani manava vidhuta kalmashayanti swargam sukritino yatha. Those who have accepted the punishment given by kings it is implied in accordance with Dharma Shastras. Because those men have committed some sinful activity, Vithuta Kalmasha, they become freed of the sinful reactions and they go to Swarga, just like people who engage in pious activities. A life for a life is just punishment for a person who cruelly and shamelessly lives at the cost of another's life. Political morality is to punish a person by a death sentence in order to save a cruel person from going to hell. But a murderer is condemned to a death sentence by the state. That a murderer is condemned to a death sentence by the state is good for the culprit, because in his next life he will not have to suffer for his act of murder, because that punishment is going to be worse. Such a death sentence for the murderer is the lowest possible punishment offered to him. And it is said in the Smriti Shastras that men who are punished by the king on the principle of a life for a life are purified of all their sins, so much so that they may be eligible for being promoted to the planets of heaven. The same thing applies for killing animals also. Manu Samhita talks about this. He who gives permission, he who kills the animal, he who sells the slaughtered animal, he who cooks the animal, he who administers distribution of the foodstuff, and at last he who eats such cooked animal food are all murderers, and all of them are liable to be punished by the laws of nature. In fact, animal killing is very, very dangerous. It is a very dangerous activity. For the animal eaters, the scriptures have sanctioned restricted animal sacrifices only. And such sanctions are there just to restrict the opening of slaughterhouses and not to encourage animal killing. The procedure under which animal sacrifice is allowed in the scriptures is good, both for the animal sacrificed and the animal eaters. It is good for the animal in the sense that the sacrificed animal is at once promoted to the human form of life after being sacrificed at the altar, and the animal eater is saved from grosser types of sins. Eating meats supplied by organized slaughterhouses, which are ghastly places for breeding all kinds of material afflictions to society, country, and the people in general. The material world is itself a place always full of anxieties, and by encouraging animal slaughter, the whole atmosphere becomes polluted more and more by war, pestilence, famine, and many other unwanted calamities. This is a very, very dangerous thing to do. Pratishrutam cha bhavata panchalayi shrinvato mama akarishye shirastasya yaste manani putraha. Furthermore, I have personally heard you promise Draupadi that you would bring forth the head of the killer of her sons. Taddaso vadhyatam papa atatayi atmabandhuha bhartuscha vipriyam veera kritavan kulapam sanaha. This man is an assassin and murderer of your own family members. Not only that, he has also dissatisfied his master. He is but the burnt remnants of his family. Kill him immediately. See how strongly Krishna condemns the Rauni Ashwatthama. The good name of Dronacharya was very much respected. Although he joined the enemy camp, the Pandavas held him always in respect, and Arjuna saluted him before beginning the fight. There was nothing wrong in that. But the son of Dronacharya degraded himself by committing acts which are never done by the Dvijas or the twice born higher castes. Ashwatthama, the son of Dronacharya, committed murder by killing the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi, by which he dissatisfied his master Duryodhana, who never approved of the heinous act of killing the 5 sleeping sons of the Pandavas. This means that Ashwatthama became an assaulter of Arjuna's own family members, and thus he was liable to be punished by him. So Krishna, he reminded Arjuna that he is one of these aggressors. The very word Atatai indicates that he is one of those 6 Agnidho Garajaschaiva, the one who sets fire, the one who gives poison, who comes with weapons without notice and directly attacks, he kidnaps somebody's wife, and so on. So Krishna reminded him of this. One minute. सूतोवाच एवं परीक्षता धर्मं पार्थः कृष्णेन चोदितः नैच्छद्धन्तुं गुरुसुतं यद्यप्यात्मा हनं महान्. Suta Goswami said, although Krishna, who was examining Arjuna in religion, encouraged Arjuna to kill the son of Dronacharya, Arjuna, a great soul, did not like the idea of killing him. Although Ashwatthama was a heinous murderer of Arjuna's family members. Atmahanam, even though he had killed his own sons. Why? Mahan. Because Arjuna was very great. He was a great soul. He is encouraged here and personally by the Lord to kill the son of Drona, but Arjuna considers that the son of his great teacher should be spared. For he happens to be the son of Dronacharya, even though he is an unworthy son, having done all sorts of heinous acts whimsically for no one's benefit. He did this just to test Arjuna's sense of dharma. This is something that some of our devotees, in fact, many of our devotees don't get it. They actually don't understand that following dharma, spiritual dharma or material dharma, it is a principle that we are following. Like here, Krishna is instructing Arjuna to do something, and Arjuna still is not interested in doing that. That is dharma. And that doesn't mean that Arjuna was wrong. In fact, Krishna is doing all this just to tell the whole world, you should follow Arjuna in dharma. That's why he is saying, Kaunteya pratijanihi, name bhakta pranashyati. Even there, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, he uses Kaunteya, Arjuna's name. You go and declare that Krishna's devotee will not perish. Because when Krishna speaks something, they don't take it seriously. But when Arjuna says something, everybody accepts it. So Krishna is making it clear that you should follow dharma the way Arjuna is following dharma. To such an extent that even when Krishna tells him not to do it, you don't do it. Right is right no matter who says it, and wrong is wrong no matter who says it. For instance, Krishna comes as Buddha and he speaks things against Vedic authority. All the Vaishnavacharyas reject it. Or Lord Shiva is considered the greatest Vaishnava. Vaishnavanam Yathashambhu. He incarnates as Shankaracharya. Speaks Mayavad. All the Vaishnavas reject it. Because you go by what is right. You don't go by who is speaking. You go by what is right. And you don't even consider whether that person may be Krishna himself. Krishna himself, when he speaks, he comes as Buddha and he speaks something, you reject it. So this is what is called sense of dharma. You need to have a proper sense of duty. This is something that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in this context has pointed out. This kind of a test is given by Lord Krishna in Bhagavatam in many places. Here he is testing Arjuna. But we'll find in the 10th canto, Krishna tests the gopis. He has also tested Prahlad Maharaj. So he points out that what to speak of this? Even the Siddha Bhaktas, the perfect devotees of the Lord, like Shukadeva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Shukadeva Goswami, he tests Parikshit in the 6th canto. He tells him, he asks him, how can he be freed from sinful reactions? First of all, he tells him, oh, it is through all these material atonements, karma kanda atonements. Then when he's dissatisfied, then he gives him something higher. Then he tells him it's actually pure bhakti. Same way in other places also. So we should remember that these kind of testing may be done here and there. But those who are capable will always pass these tests. It is not that Arjuna was incomplete in the sense of his duty, nor was Lord Shri Krishna unaware of Arjuna's sense of duty. But Lord Shri Krishna puts to the test many of his pure devotees just to magnify the sense of duty. It is for our sake that he does it, that you should follow it. And it is dharma means it's dharma. It means nothing, it's like you have to follow it like no one's business. Even if Krishna comes to you and tells you something else, no, you still cannot disobey. Like that, he wants the world to follow. That is what is referred to as magnifying the sense of duty. Thopetya swashibiram Govinda Priyasarthi Nyavedayattam Priya Yai Shochantya Atmajan Hatan. After reaching his own camp, Arjuna, along with his dear friend and charioteer Sri Krishna, entrusted the murderer unto his dear wife who was lamenting for her murdered sons. Here we find Arjuna is referred to as Govinda Priyasarathi, he whose dear charioteer was Lord Govinda. So, from this we can understand how dear Arjuna is to Lord Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself has claimed Arjuna as his dearmost friend. Bhaktosime sakhacheti. Every living being is thus related with the Supreme Lord by some sort of affectionate relation, either as servant, or as friend, or as parent, or as an object of conjugal love. And there is selfless affection in going both ways in all of these four rasas. Everyone can thus enjoy the company of the Lord in the spiritual realm if he at all desires and sincerely tries for it by the process of Bhakti Yoga. Tathahritam pashuvad pashabaddham avanmukham karma jugupsitena niriksha krishnapakritam guru sutam vamasvabhava kripaya nanamacha. Sri Sutta Goswami said, Draupadi then saw Ashwatthama, who was bound with ropes like an animal and silent for having enacted the most inglorious murder due to her female nature and due to her being naturally good and well behaved. She showed him due respects as a Brahmana. Here, okay. So Ashwatthama, he had his head down because he had committed a very, very abominable activity. He had committed a very great activity of harm. He had hurt. But still, Draupadi, she was good and well behaved. That was her nature. Ashwatthama was condemned by the Lord himself. And he was treated by Arjuna just like a culprit, not like the son of a Brahmana or teacher. But when he was brought before Srimati Draupadi, she, although grieved for the murder of her sons, and although the murder was present before her, could not withdraw that due respect generally offered to a Brahmana or to the son of a Brahmana. This is due to her mild nature as a woman. Women as a class are no better than boys, and therefore they have no discriminatory power like that of a man. Ashwatthama proved himself to be an unworthy son of Dronacharya or of a Brahmana, and for this reason he was condemned by the greatest authority, Lord Shri Krishna. And yet a mild woman could not withdraw her natural courtesy for a Brahmana. Even to date, in a Hindu family, a woman shows proper respect to the Brahmana caste, however fallen and heinous a Brahmabandhu may be. But the men have begun to protest against Brahmabandhus who are born in families of good Brahmanas, but by action are less than Shudras. The specific word used in the shloka is Vamasvabhava, mild and gentle by nature. A good man or woman accepts anything very easily, but a man of average intelligence does not do so. One must have good discriminatory power to judge a thing on its merit. We should not follow the mild nature of a woman and thereby accept that which is not genuine. Ashwatthama may be respected by a good natured woman, but that does not mean that he is as good as a genuine Brahman. That is the point. That is the point. Just because Draupadi is respectful, and we will see Yudhishthir and others, they will approve of Draupadi's verdict, her point of view. But nevertheless, Prabhupada's point is Ashwatthama still should not be considered to be a genuine Brahmana. Uvacha cha sahantyasya brandhananayanam sati muchita mesha brahmano nitaram guru. She could not tolerate Ashwatthama's being bound by ropes and being a devoted lady. She said, release him, for he is a Brahmana or spiritual master, in the sense that he is the um, son of our spiritual master. Arjuna arrested Ashwatthama knowing perfectly well that he was the son of Dronacharya. Krishna also knew him to be so, but both of them condemned the murderer without consideration of his being the son of a Brahman. According to revealed scriptures, a teacher or spiritual master is liable to be rejected if he proves himself unworthy of the position of a guru or spiritual master. A guru is called also an acharya, or a person who has personally assimilated all the essence of shastras and has helped his disciples to adopt the ways. Ashwatthama failed to discharge the duties of a brahmana or teacher, and therefore he was liable to be rejected from the exalted position of a brahmana. On this consideration, both Lord Sri Krishna and Arjuna were right in condemning Ashwatthama. But to a good lady like Draupadi, the matter was considered not from the angle of Shastric vision, but as a matter of custom. By custom, Ashwatthama was offered the same respect as offered to his father. So this is a custom. So Draupadi, she wanted Ashwatthama to be at once released. This was her sentiment. Of course, there's another angle to this, the spiritual angle. As a devotee of the Lord, she could not tolerate being insulting to others and so on. A devotee of the Lord can tolerate all sorts of tribulation personally, but still such devotees are never unkind to others, even to the enemy. These are the characteristics of one who is a pure devotee of the Lord. So she was a pure devotee of the Lord. That is another perspective also. That is also there. Sarahasyo dhanurvedasya visargopasamyamaha astragramasya bhavata shikshito yadanugraha. It was by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned the military art of throwing arrows and the confidential art of controlling weapons. So he had learned various confidential mantras, how to use them, how to retract them. He had received various weapons, mystic weapons. So obviously that is because of the mercy that Arjuna had received. It is just a form of mercy. In the Vedic system of education, when the teacher likes you, then he teaches you. If he doesn't like you, he doesn't teach you. That's all. It's a simple thing. You can't pay him and this and that. If he likes you, he teaches you. If he doesn't like you, he just shuts it down. So she reminds Arjuna that it is by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned all these things. Gross military science is dependent on material weapons, but finer than that is the art of throwing the arrows saturated with Vedic hymns, which act more effectively than gross material weapons like machine guns or atomic bombs. The control is by Vedic mantras or the transcendental science of sound. It is said in the Ramayana that Maharaj Dasharatha, the father of Lord Sri Ram, used to control arrows by sound only. He could pierce his target with his arrow by only hearing the sound without seeing the object. So this is a finer military science than that of the gross material military weapons used nowadays. Arjuna was taught all this, and therefore Draupadi wished that Arjuna feel obliged to Acharya Drona for all these benefits. And in the absence of Dronacharya, his son was his representative. That was the opinion of the good lady Draupadi. Why did Drona become a teacher of military science? Because a Brahmana has to become a teacher. He has to, that is his profession. Patana, Patana, Yajana, Yajana, Dana, Pratigraha. Out of this, Patana is teaching, Yajana, teaching how to worship. These are all very, generally, this is how they would survive. A learned Brahmana should become a teacher, a priest, and a recipient of charity. pratigraha. A bona fide Brahmana is authorized to accept such professions. Sayesha Bhagavan Drona Prajarupena Vartate. Tasyatmanordham Patnyaste Nanvagad Virasuh Kripi. He, Dronacharya, is certainly still existing, being represented by his son. His wife Kripi did not undergo a sati with him because she had a son. Drona's Ardhangini, his better half, Kripi, was there. According to the scriptures, also we know Ardho va esha atmano yat patni jayapatim jayapati agnim adadhiyatam. One should know that one's wife is half of oneself. A husband and a wife should together engage in certain ritualistic activities and so on. So they are considered together as one unit. So when the husband has died, how is it that she is alive? Oh, she did not follow her husband, meaning that she did not also die when he died. Yataha, because Virasu Putravati, she had a son. She had a heroic son. A devoted wife who is, according to revealed scripture, the better half of her husband, is justified in embracing voluntary death along with her husband if she is without issue. But in the case of the wife of Dronacharya, she did not undergo such a trial because she had her son, the representative of her husband. A widow is a widow only in name if there is a son of her husband existing. So in either case, Ashwatthama was a representative of Dronacharya, and therefore killing Ashwatthama would be like killing Dronacharya. Tad dharmagya mahabhaga bhavadbher gauravam kulam vrijinam narhati praptum pujyam vandyam abhikshnasha. O most fortunate one who know the principles of religion, it is not good for you to cause grief to glorious family members who are always respectable and worshipful. A slight insult for a respectable family is sufficient to invoke grief. Therefore, a cultured man should always be careful in dealing with worshipful family members. Marodi dasya janani Gautami patidevata yathaham mrita vatsarta. What is all this? Why all this is happening now? Wait. Marodi dasya janani Gautami patidevata yathaham mrita vatsarta rodim yashrum mukhi muhu. My Lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. So she was sympathetic. Sympathetic good lady as she was, Srimati Draupadi did not want to put the wife of Dronacharya in the same position of childlessness, both from the point of motherly feelings and from the respectable position held by the wife of Dronacharya. And if you, on the other hand, actually kill Ashwatthama, what would be the problem? She states that in text 48. Yaih kopitam brahmakulam rajanyai rajitatmabhihi tatkulam pradahatyashu sanubandham shucharpitam. If the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmana order and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of the royal family and brings grief upon them all. So it can destroy the entire royal dynasty. So therefore, they were always the Brahmanas as a community was always respected by the Kshatriya families, Vaishya families, Shudra families. There's something wrong. 1 minute. Just a minute. There's something wrong here. Drashta is not Krashtavya, Drashtavya. Continuous. Dharmyam ityadayo vachasa षड्गुणा पूर्वश्लोक षट्के द्रष्टव्या. Okay. Sutovacha. Dharmyam nyayam sakaranam nirvyalikam samam mahat raja dharmasuto ragya pratyanandad vachod. Suta Goswami said, O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthira fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equity, and without duplicity. So, there are 6 features of Draupadi's statements, and they are to be seen, they are actually referring to the previous 6 verses. The verses spoken by Draupadi. Tatra dharmyam, dharmadanapetam. Draupadi's opinion was in line with dharma. Muchatam. She wanted him released. Nyayam, nyayadanapetam. And it was just. Sarahasya ityadi. When she said that you have received these mantras, confidential mantras from him. Sakaruna. Karunam. Tasya atmanartham. Filled with mercy. Because she says that Dronacharya's better half is this lady who's the mother of Ashwatthama. Nirvyalikam, without duplicity in dharma. Tad dharmagya, that is this text. It is not good for you to cause grief. So that shows that she is not duplicitous there. Samam, Marodid. She is dealing with Gautami or Kripi, Ashwatthama's mother, the way she would deal with herself. She does not want Kripi to suffer the way Draupadi herself, is suffering. Dukha samyokte. Because she is talking about the same distress that she would feel. Mahat. Yaih kopitam iti nishturoktya hitopadesha. She has spoken a very harsh statement in the previous verse. Here, it's a very grave, great statement. So she shows that she is thinking in broad terms. Evam bhutam rajya vachaha hedvija raja pratyananda anmoditavan. So King Yudhishthira supported this opinion of Queen Draupadi. One should not tolerate the humiliation of a member of a great family. Arjuna and his family were indebted to the family of Dronacharya because of Arjuna's learning the military science from him. If ingratitude were shown to such a benevolent family, it would not at all be justified from the moral standpoint. The wife of Dronacharya, who was a half body of the great soul, must be treated with compassion. And she must not be put into grief because of her son's death. That is compassion. Such statements by Draupadi are without duplicity, because action should be taken with full knowledge. The feeling of equality was there because Draupadi spoke out of her personal experience. A barren woman cannot understand the grief of a mother. Draupadi was herself a mother, and therefore her calculation of the depth of Kripi's grief was quite to the point. And it was glorious, great, because she wanted to show proper respect to a great family. This is called maturity. Not that you go from one extreme to another extreme. Maturity means you see various things and you gradually come to an understanding of what should be done, to what degree. Like here, Arjuna will come to a mature conclusion on how to deal with this situation. Nakula, Sahadevascha, Yuyudhano Dhananjay, Bhagavan Devaki Putro, Ye Chan Ye Yashi Yoshita. Nakula and Sahadeva, the younger brothers of the king, and also Satyaki. Arjuna, the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, son of Devaki, and the ladies and others all unanimously agreed with the king. Tatraha amarshito bhimas tasya shreyan vadasmrutaha na bhartur napanascharthe yohan suktan shishun vritha. Bhima, however, angrily disagreed with them and recommended killing this culprit, who had murdered sleeping children for no purpose and for neither his nor his master's interest. According to Bhima, a person like Ashwatthama should just be killed. Otherwise, Narakapata Prasanga, otherwise there is the possibility of him having to go to hell. So therefore he says, no, he has not satisfied his master, nor has he fulfilled his own interest. Unnecessarily has killed their children. So it has been totally useless in every way. Nishamya Bhima Gaditam Draupadyascha Chaturbhuja Alokya Vadanam Sakhya Idam Maha Hasanniva. Chaturbhuja, the four-armed one, or the personality of God, after hearing the words of Bhima, Draupadi, and others, saw the face of his dear friend Arjuna, and he began to speak as if smiling. Chaturbhujokte ayam bhava. The reference to Lord Krishna as Chaturbhuja, the four-handed personality of Godhead, implies Bhime tam hantum pravritte. Bhima had sprung up in order to kill Ashwatthama. Draupadyam kya sahasatan nivarane pravrittaya. And Draupadi immediately got up to prevent Ashwatthama from being killed. Uvayo samvaranaya avishkrita chaturbhuja. And to prevent both of them, Draupadi on one side, Bhima on another hand, the Supreme Lord, he manifested four arms. All this was going on while his dear friend Arjuna was in a state of doubt, thoughtful what should actually be done. Lord Shri Krishna had two arms. Why he is designated as four arms is explained by Sridhar Swami. Both Bhima and Draupadi had opposite views about killing Ashwatthama. Bhima wanted him to be immediately killed, whereas Draupadi wanted to save him. You can imagine Bhima ready to kill while Draupadi is obstructing him. And in order to prevent both of them, the Lord discovered another two arms. Originally, the primeval Lord Shri Krishna displays only two arms. But in his Narayana feature, he exhibits four. In his Narayana feature, he resides with his devotees in the Vaikuntha planets. While in his original Shri Krishna feature, he resides in the Krishna Loka planet, far, far above the Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. Therefore, if Shri Krishna is called Chaturbhuja, there is no contradiction. If need be, he can display hundreds of arms, as he exhibited in his Vishwarupa shown to Arjuna. Therefore, one who can display hundreds and thousands of arms can also manifest four whenever needed. And Arjuna was perplexed about what to do with Ashwatthama. Lord Shri Krishna, as a very dear friend of Arjuna, voluntarily took up the matter just to make a solution. And he was smiling also. All right, I'll stop with this. Questions? If there are no questions, then we can just close. When Arjuna didn't want to kill Ashwatthama despite Krishna's instructions, it is approved, but not Yudhishthira's hesitation to lie despite Krishna's instructions during Kurukshetra war to make believe Dronacharya, his son, was killed. What is it? First of all, I can't understand this question, but I can assume you're asking why is it like this? Why is Yudhishthira's hesitation to obey Krishna's instruction to tell a lie during the war of Kurukshetra? Why is that criticized? Whereas Arjuna's refusal to obey Krishna's instruction here, that is appreciated? If I assume this is the question, the answer is when Krishna instructed Yudhishthira to kill. See, first of all, there are considerations. In Vedic Dharma, there are 5 reasons for speaking untruth. Under 5 uh, situations, speaking untruth is actually good. It is, I think Bhagavatam also says that. Let me see. Yes. स्त्रीषु नर्म विवाहे च वृत्त्यर्थे प्राणसंकटे गो ब्राह्मणार्थे हिंसायां नानृतं स्यात् जुगुप्सितम्. In flattering a woman to bring her under control, in joking, in a marriage ceremony, in earning one's livelihood when one's life is in danger, in protecting cows and Brahmanical culture, or in protecting a person from an enemy's hand, falsity is never condemned. This is one, but there are also other statements. Uh, where is that? Another statement in Mahabharata. Sorry, I came back alive. Something went wrong. Um, okay, what was the question? Oh, okay, this is what I was interested in showing. So there's another reference. Another reference from the Mahabharata also on one minute, wait. No. There's another list from Mahabharata also which gives a list like this. But it says that in Prana Krishna, where is this? Why I'm not able to get it? Anyway, I'm not able to get it right now. But that's a similar list of statements. There also we find that under certain circumstances, speaking untruth is actually very beneficial and good for all. So when Krishna, he wanted to tell that, he wanted Yudhishthira to propagate that Ashwatthama is dead, when only Ashwatthama the elephant had died. Yudhishthira should not have hesitated, because Krishna knows how to follow dharma much better than us. The Supreme Personality of God, he knows better than us about how to follow dharma, even material dharma, because he never breaks dharma. Krishna himself never breaks dharma in all of his forms. Even as Swayam Bhagavan, he never breaks dharma. It's very difficult to understand as we progress towards higher and higher forms of the Supreme Being. It'll naturally become more and more difficult to understand his activities and so on. But the Acharyas have pointed out that the Supreme Lord never breaks dharma. So you need to carefully see the situation. In this context, Krishna is telling Arjuna to kill, but there is a scriptural rule that a son of a genuine Brahmana should not be killed. So Arjuna has that in his mind, should not be killed. So he will not kill, you will see that he will not kill, but he will perform an activity that is as good as killing him. Okay, and I think okay. Any other questions? Okay, wait 1 minute. You said we as devotees need to follow first dharma, but dharma seems very complicated. And also it is said one who surrenders to Mukunda, one does not have to fulfill all obligations, meaning one will not be following dharma if he does not fulfill obligations. Now, if you surrender unto Mukunda in the Bhagavatam sense means you become a Nirapeksha. Nirapeksha means you give up sinful activities, you give up family life, you give up everything, and you just engage in Bhakti Yoga 24 hours a day. You don't give a damn to who is alive, who's dead, who's happy, who's unhappy. You just engage in devotional service. If you want, you can propagate Krishna consciousness to everyone. That's all. Bhajanandi type or Goshanandi type. Nirapeksha life. That was Prabhupada's initial offer. But then, then we said, no, but it's too much. We are human beings. We know what is this, that, and all that. So then next step, if you cannot do that, be a Parinishtita. Follow bhakti predominantly, and a little bit you have to follow Varnashrama Dharma just for public welfare. He said, Prabhupada started saying that from 1974. Then in 1977, he said, no, you people yourself require Varnashrama Dharma. Swanishta. Primarily, you have to serve Krishna through Varnashrama Dharma. Secondarily, you have to serve Krishna through Bhagavata Dharma. This is Swanishta. So you need to learn Dharma. You need to follow it. Prabhupada has given, if we study Prabhupada's books, it would not be difficult to understand what the rules and regulations of Varnashrama Dharma are. Anyway, Gaudiya Vaishnavas are meant to come to the point of Nirapeksha. So even if most of the time initially is spent in the rules and regulations of Varnashrama Dharma for men and Stri Dharma for women, they will have to increase their engagement in Bhagavata Dharma. So from Swanishta they become Parinishthita. And then they have to come to the point of Nirapeksha. Gaudiya Vaishnava, the Gaudiya Vaishnava platform is Nirapeksha Bhakti. Raghunath Das Goswami, Natharmam, Nadharmam, Shrutigana Niruktam, Kila Guru. We have to come to this point that in addition to giving up adharma, we have to give up material dharma also. But that is almost unimaginable to many of us. Because how do you give up adharma and then dharma? But when Krishna blesses us, then it's possible. All right. We'll discuss further through Telegram if required. Akshakalpatarubhyasya kripasinubhyo chapatitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Okay.